That's our next conversation. Thank you for staying with us. The Central Bank of Nigeria has said that the country's inflation rate and the pressure on the exchange rate will reduce in the coming year. That is 2024. What's today's date? Today is 16. That's less than half a month from now.
2 weeks plus.
Okay, but no. They said 2024. That it could be December. Let me hope not.
Okay.
Let me hope not. But,
all right.
While the country's inflation rate jumps to 27.33 for November, the highest in 18 years, the Apex Bank's governor, Olayemi Cardoso, projects a slump in 2024. He made this comment during a presentation to the National Assembly Joint Committees on Banking, Insurance, and Other Financial Institutions and Banking Regulations on the activities of the bank, the CBN, and the performance of the Nigerian economy. He also said the country is expecting less oil revenue in the new year owing to several factors. Well, maybe when we talk about energy. By the way, it's in the news today that Ghana's inflation rate reduced by 8.8%.
By 8? Well, so there's hope for us.
There is hope for us. So, but how all of this is going to go, let's have this conversation with two gentlemen with us this morning. Emmanuel Onasami is lead partner, Cardinal Professional Economy. He's an economist. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we also have joining us virtually, Gospel Obele, who is a chief economist, Streetnomics. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Let me begin with Economics 101 to both of you this morning. For those who are hearing inflation rate is high, and then they go irate on the government and all of that, what does it mean when you say inflation? Let me begin with you, Mr. Onasami. When you say inflation, what should the Nigerian understand inflation to mean?
Okay, I'm also pro-clarity, you understand?
Okay.
In the sense that, you can be carried away with your technical jargon and you lose everybody and they are unable to relate with whatever, the statistic are churning out. You just said the headline inflation is 27.33. What does it mean to an average person, sitting down in the sitting room, and how do I understand that? I think it will be good to have to first speak about what inflation is. You understand, a layman understanding of inflation. Inflation simply speaks to situation where prices of goods as services are rising periodically. So you see month on month, they keep reviewing it and say, okay, what was the prices of goods and services in different sectors, and then from that perspective, they compare it and then say, okay, last month was this figure, this month was this figure, and then whether there's an increase or decrease, but in the case of Nigeria, not like Ghana, in November we had an increase in inflation, and when inflation happens, what then means is that your purchasing power as an individual then reduces. You understand? Meaning that what you could buy last month with, say, 100 naira, you can no longer purchase that same thing.
So, in other words, let's say, hypothetically, a cup of gari or a bucket of gari in the market was 50 naira.
Say in October.
Yeah. So it has increased now by 27.33% on the average.
Okay, the headline inflation is actually year on year, but if you look at the month on month, maybe like 300 basis points or 3.72 increase.
Here we go.
Okay, last Christmas we were buying chickens at what? 4,000 naira.
Yes, Alero could relate better because that's our department.
This year we're buying chickens at 12,000. Turkeys have gone from 35 to 65,000.
Okay.
I mean, that's what is making sense to the common man on the street.
So that is the year on year,
Yes.
and headline inflation says little about what the situation is, because the headline inflation is like a statistical average of all the inflation across all the sectors. So,
okay, let me see if that's the same way Mr. Obele understands what inflation to mean. Help us understand. Do you agree with him, or you want to add a twist?
Yes, I do agree with him. And to a very large extent as well. I think there's also some form of miscommunication in the jargon, which sometimes can be a leverage point for professionals, in the sense that, when you talk about inflation rate, went up by 2% or 3% in terms of the month-on-month difference. It doesn't necessarily mean that the prices have gone down. It just simply means that the pace at which prices are increasing has slowed down. So prices are still increasing, but the pace has slowed down. All right. So he's very correct to say that the headline is just year-on-year comparison. You also have month-on-month comparison as well. But overall, it's safe to say that the price of bread in Nigeria has increased significantly. The price of garri and sugar and all those basic things. So if the average Nigerian is spending more amount or more sides of their income to just have a daily, to just, be able to survive, trying to be able to meet basic necessities, it technically means that there's a pain, across the board. That means people are spending more to eat, to put a roof over their head, and that's also sort of, leads to some of poverty, in the sense that people cannot have so much to fund their dreams and aspirations.
And that's actually
constrained.
Yeah, my apologies. And that's actually, quite strong a statement you just made, particularly in the light of what came up in the news in the past maybe 1 or 2 weeks, that people prefer to go to what is referred to on the streets as loan sharks, just to get a loan to feed. And that's really, really troubling. But when the CBN projects a reduction in inflation, and you've also already given us an idea that projection of a reduction in inflation doesn't mean that the prices are down. It's just that it slows down. The increase slows down from, say, 100 kilometers per hour to maybe 60 kilometers per hour. I'm trying to put it in perspective as well.
Yes, sir.
So in that light, do you see that happening in the light of the projection of the CBN?
Well, to be very honest with you, I don't see that happening. The reason is because for you to envisage that projection would technically mean that there are strong structural, solutions or reforms, that are being put in place right now that we can't see. All right. So part of the reasons why we have so much inflationary problem in the Nigerian context is we're not producing enough that we can, sort of meet local demand for food at the quality and at the quantity, two different dynamics. Then you also have a situation where we are a strongly import-dependent economy. No country can really beat inflation if it's a consumption-driven economy, all right? You need a level of productivity. The same thing as well with the exchange rate and all that. No currency can gain value on the grounds of, consumption, all right? So you need a strong level of productivity at base in local economy. Produce what you eat, and you can produce it at the quality and at the scale for the 200 million plus Nigerians that is now. Once we begin to do that, and we can begin to lead the charge around made in Nigeria, consuming locally, and reducing import inflation and all the dynamics, then we can also control how global events like the Russia-Ukraine war, COVID-19, climate change, and all that globally are impacting commodity prices, which generally means impacting the cost of wheat, soya, bean, grain, and all those things, and in turn impacting the goods and services that are being imported into the Nigerian economy. All right, so we need to deal with the productivity drivers. Once the productivity and structural elements are dealt with, and we can produce food at scale. All right, you imagine the level at which the average Nigerian will find relief in terms of being able to save more amounts of monies and all that. You also want to look at locally in terms of access to from farm to market. What does it cost moving a full? I mean, there's a local government in Benue State where they produce yams on But the cost of moving those yams from Benue State to Mautor with Lagos is way more expensive than the cost of producing the yam itself in Benue. I didn't even get it. So once we begin to deal with the farm to market challenges, you will also realize that all of these costings will slash down. You also want to think about the fuel subsidy conversation. You know, how prices of diesel, fuel, and all that have skyrocketed in recent times. So the high cost of transportation is also impacting on the cost of mobility or cost of moving food items from farm to market. So the conversation on inflation in Nigeria is a play of very interdependent factors that to a very large extent are still hinged on the lack of productivity we have in the country. All right, and also the policy inconsistencies that we found in recent times that are impacting on prices and the movement of food, goods, and services.
Mr. Anasame, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah.
Are we going to achieve this as the CBN has said in 2024?
What Gospel was trying to say, you know, sometimes we need to be more frantic with ourselves and not deceive ourselves as an economy, you understand, as a nation. The truth is that if you don't get the fundamentals right, you know, your inflation will never drop. And when I say the fundamentals, these are the factors of production. You know, the factors that can lead to productivity. Look at the Nigerian environment. Everything that contributes to production has gone haywire when it comes to price. And if that is the case, you understand, then the cost of production will be high, and then the cost of product will be high. If you go back to the textbook and evaluate the Nigerian environment very clearly, what has been established is that the inflation we are experiencing in Nigeria is a food-led cost push inflation. So let me break it down for the benefit of our audience. So when I say food-led, you know, is because they are saying that the reason the inflation is going up is because food prices have gone up. So if I'm a service provider, I'm providing service to Alero now, maybe as a consultant, and the price I need to buy my food has gone up, I will tell Alero, you need to increase my fee.
Yes.
No matter what service I'm providing to.
Because you have got to eat.
I've got to eat. Yeah. So food-led cost push, you understand? Cost push in the sense that, you know, the factors of production has gone bad. Look at when the cost of procuring forex for import, because largely we are still an import-dependent nation. You know, cost of procuring forex has almost doubled, or even not more than 4 times, you understand? And then you look at power. You understand? Removal of fuel subsidy also came in, you know, where, you know, businesses have to struggle to cost of powering their business has also gone up. So if you want to look at it, I saw a video on the social media where one of these Nollywood celebrity was making a skit on why the price of egg is also skyrocketing, you know. And what the person doesn't understand that in the agriculture as we have it today in Nigeria is not as efficient as it ought to be run. If you look at other climes, you don't need generator to run a farm. You use the waste generated in that farm to power the farm, you know, because there are government structures that have put things in place to ensure that farming is done more efficiently and food price can go down, you know.
Now, what you just said now, it means that all of the apparatus of government need to work in synchrony somewhat. The analogy in my head is that of the human body.
True.
It's a very, very complex machine. It has 37 trillion parts. 37 trillion parts. Each cell, we are made up of 37 trillion parts in body, bones, and blood cells. The engine of the federal government has 1,500 plus ministries, departments, and agencies. The total population of staff of the federal government, I don't think is up to 2 million.
At all.
Now, we have an engine, a human body, that has 37 trillion cells. We have a federal government engine that is less than 2 million parts. They need to work in synchrony. That's what I hear you saying, if everything is supposed to. So what are the things that the CBN must champion to get all of that engine, the different parts of that engine of the federal government working in sync? So that these things that you're saying can...
True, you know, and in the past, the CBN has dabbled into the areas that they are not supposed to dabble into.
Well, thankfully, they said they are retracing their steps.
So CBN is primarily responsible for monetary policies.
Repentant.
Okay, they're not repentant. And when it comes to monetary policies, you speak to, interest rates and managing inflation within the economy, which is their primary duty, you understand? And managing inflation, is not just a one-time bullet. It's something that you have to look at an holistic perspective. What are the short-term measures that we will put in place? What are the medium to long-term measures that we also put in place as a government? And that's where all agencies, parastatus, ministry has to come together and then say, if we want to, on a long-term basis, we have to start making the Nigerian environment friendly for production. You understand? And let me tell you, as of today, Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, the body language is that it's cheaper to do nothing than to manufacture in Nigeria. It's just cheaper to do nothing than to manufacture in Nigeria because all the contributors of production are no longer friendly. It's not just
if, from what we hear, manufacturers have to pay as many as 37 different taxes, then we will tend to agree that it's cheaper to do nothing than do all that work producing and then have to pay 37 different taxes.
More so, there are some other aspects of economy that suggest to you that why do you have to stress? Even when you are doing something that much and you're getting nothing, and somebody can just sit in the comfort of his own, do some forex transaction, and then the person is super rich. You understand? Those fundamentals are there that are not encouraging investment. I'm going somewhere because I have to say this. It's not just enough that you have inflation. It is good that as an economy you bite an inflationary impact once and you maintain a stability. Because I tell you the fact that it's not so much about the charade of going to Dubai, going to Saudi Arabia to go and woo investors that will bring the investment into the Nigerian economy. It is the stability of your economy that will attract foreign direct investors. You understand? Let me give you an example. You are coming in as an investor. Today, inflation rate is 27.33 headline, and you have planned your fundamentals based on that. You have planned that this is how I'm going to do business. And if it's stable like that, that means you can come into the environment and do business reliably. But in the situation where inflation figures keeps rising months on months, and you are at the risk that the economy will slide into hyperinflation. And when there is hyperinflation, there will be economic recession. People cannot purchase your product and services. You can never attract any investment that way. So it's not so much about the charade of going around seeking investment. It's about you sitting down locally and tell yourself that, what do I need to do to maintain my fundamentals in a manner that can attract investment?
Mr. Obele, the issue of the forex, I'm guessing that is the reason why even foreign airlines are threatening to leave Nigeria. How do you think we can shore up the value of our naira? Or what do you think that CBN will have to do in 2024 to make their promise real?
Thank you very much, Alara, for the question. I will answer that question from two different angles. The first angle is this. It's important to create context to say that the value of a currency is hinged on at least two conditions in the times we live in now globally. The first necessary condition is the fact that you have a productive economy. You have a productive, thriving local economy attracting investment. So meaning that people can easily buy and sell, exchange value, goods and services and all of that. Your economy is a production powerhouse. And we already have that. We're close to about 40. But I think we already have that. We have a potential of 41 million SMEs in Nigeria who have a potential to really scale what they're doing, right? And you want to think of that because in terms of global branding and all that, if you look at the value of the Nigerian budget is less than 1/3 of the global value of the Apple brand, for instance, and that is just one business. All right, so if you think of how much 10% of that 41 million businesses, if enabled right within the productivity lines, can thrive in terms of what the value of what they can bring to the table and all that, you'll be surprised to see that the currency would be, much more better than it is today. Secondly, if you want to think about power and all of these different dynamics, if you fix power and all of these little infrastructural questions, the Naira will improve by almost 50 to 70%. All right. Part of what we're dealing with right now locally is the fact that we're not a productive economy. Once you fix the productive drivers, the Naira will begin to gain value because you can now facilitate exchange of goods and services more easily within and across borders. The second sufficient condition is the fact that we are not institutionally driving our monetary policy in such a way that the Naira, the outlook of the Naira itself is positive within the African and global landscape. All right, if you look at what is happening right now with the dollars, with the pounds and euros, there is a global monetary / political arrangement and movement, all right, to strengthen the currencies globally within markets now. And it's what we term as currency wars, all right? And that's why more nations are trying to come into the BRICS environment, and then, looking at conversations of having the BRICS currency, to trade on. You're having conversations of China trying to bring the yuan to the global trade table to say any sort of exchange you facilitate in the Chinese economy has to be done in yuan and not the dollars. You're having conversations of the AFCFTA saying that we need to have a direct exchange between the Naira and the shillings and not with a third party. So there is so much friction around currency dynamics globally right now. So the central bank, outside just facilitating a productive economy, the fiscal authorities also need to strategically manage and lobby for the positioning of the Naira within the African market, at least to start with. Now, on the second block of trying to respond to this question is looking at our low-hanging fruits. All right, globally, global goods, global services traded in the past 1 year surpassed global goods traded by 15%. All right, first time in donkey years and in decades that we've had global digitally services traded items, surpassing global goods traded. And that's to tell you that we are in the world of services, sort of in terms of exchange of value globally across markets now. And the Nigerian GDP has about 56 composition of the services sector. But right now, we do not have a strategic national services policy. There are lots and lots of Nigerians who are constantly freelancing, doing work on Fiverr, exchanging and all of that services across borders, every day. But there's no room to track that. All right, we don't have a services policy to say, can we take this services market, by the way, which needs a lot of organization, and strategic, positioning, not necessarily formalization. All right, so can we take that services block and promote it, and then facilitate that exchange within and across borders, such that there's a pipeline to track how much FX is moving within that flow, and how the government can also, make good returns from it. So, organizing the services sector and also supporting loads of SMEs who are already export ready. There's a study we did with the Faith Foundation called the State of Entrepreneurship Report in Nigeria. Lots of SMEs in Nigeria are ready to export, but they cannot find the necessary one-stop shop environment that helps them facilitate access to market solutions, access to finance solutions, the necessary documentations that they need to take their products from Nigeria and ensure that those products are in Tesco, United Kingdom, and people are actually buying those chocolates and all of that. So, why should Nigeria have the highest production in cocoa, in tomatoes and all of that, and yet we cannot still export chocolates? Not because there are no SMEs who are not doing that in terms of producing chocolates locally, but there is no mechanism to scale and help those people get their chocolates within Sainsbury's in the UK and all the likes. All right, so there has to be a very, very clear definition in terms of how do we support more SMEs to access markets within the African and global scale. And we also need to support the services block, thrive in terms of having a foreign exchange pipeline through which we can organize what they're doing and have a percentage code to say that this is how much comes into the government coffers. Right. You also have the diaspora remittances market. Sorry to say, just 30 seconds. Right. You have the diaspora market, where remittances are almost up to the tune of $27 billion annually. All right, and all of these pennies go into welfareist funding in terms of consumption for brothers and sisters and relatives back home. All right, so if we can tap into that diaspora remittances block, you realize that there is a lot of FX possibilities to finance lots of investment narratives back home. So the possibilities and low-hanging fruits are already there. We just need to channel right with the right possibilities, right political will, transparency and accountability at the very least, to facilitate the onboarding into the mainstream.
Well, that transparency thing, well, you just flagged a error here, on that one. But let me come to you, Mr. Nelson, because the reason is that, earlier on, we were having conversations around ease of doing business. Both of you have been talking about our productivity and all of that. But then there's the issue of ease of doing business, whether or not anyone who invests money in any business in the country will actually, be happy at the end of the day. Talking about exportation and people exporting out of the country, it's one of the things a number of people who have attempted or who still do it complain about is the corruption in the system that is militating significantly against our capacity to produce, to export and bring forex into the country. A good number of people who will tell you, look, the only reason they cannot export is because some people will insist that they should exchange hands, one way or the other. And this perhaps speaks to some of the issues you are raising about the inhibitions in limitations, inhibitions, whatever, that is not allowing businessmen to thrive in the country. That will definitely have a serious telling on forex into the country. How do we deal with that?
You took that comment out of my mouth. He was saying there's a gain, from the export of services, and that is fine. We have a number of talented Nigerians sitting in their rooms and then providing services offshore, and then they bring in forex. Not to say that the part of exporting tangible goods is also not very important, because services, yes, although it's very easy to do, but it doesn't help your productive sector like that. You understand? Services cannot really employ people like production will employ people. See, for example, in manufacturing, FCMG, in Nestle, a Coca-Cola, see the number of people working within those facilities, and that is how you get your people employed. But one person just working inside this room will not stimulate, and help you with your unemployment figures. That's why your point is very, very important. Nigeria today still operates the most inefficient port system in Nigeria, not because there are no brains in the world, not because there are no brain, not because there are no technology that can help us to get better efficient, but because it appears the system is just designed to work that way. Because if you look at one of the bane of development in Nigeria is because we don't have strong institutions, we don't have strong agencies. Everybody appointed to drive the affair of agency is either running the bid or interest of so-so party in a manner that, some things cannot be done the way they have to be done based on competence. Look at our port system. The regime before the regime we have now, the ease of doing business project was a major thing. But I tell you the truth, you can have all the textbook, things that you want to put out there. If there's no political will for you to implement them, you go around circles. Right. So until our politicians get transparent and they get sincere on whether they want to help Nigerians or not, then we may not be making the right progress. You understand? The problem of Nigeria is not novel like that. The problem of Nigeria is not out of the moons. You understand? It's basic. And when you have sincere people that are ready to help us get out of this system, I think we'll get out of it. I have businesses that I consult for that are into export business, and let me tell you, most of them are clearly diversified because of the inefficiency going on there. You want to export a product and the product is still there 2 months, it has not left the shore of Nigeria. In fact, the product is getting spoiled and damaged inside the container. So how do you want to run those kind of business and say you want to bring in forex into the economy? The system is so much designed such that you incur demurrages, you incur penalties, and at the end of the day, it's just not attractive for you to do export business. So there has to be something deliberate to make the port efficient if we really want to get production stimulated and export for the purpose of earning forex.
The port is like an organ of the body that also has so many cells. So there is SON, there is customs, there's NAFDAC, and all those things. Are these the elements you're talking about?
Yeah, those are part of the issues, and customs itself, which are part of. So the way other climes have organized this, you understand. You see, in Nigeria, NAFDAC is pulling you one hand. This agency is pulling you another end. This person wants this interest and all that. At the end of the day, you are the business that is bearing the brunt. But if you look at, for example, in the United Kingdom, you have the tax authority and the custom under one agency. You understand? Under one agency, so that whatever you want to do as custom is also in sync with tax. Okay. But in Nigeria, you see, customs will say that, you undervalue your products because you don't want to pay high tariff or custom charges, your duty, you understand? But the tax authority will say, no, you overprice your product because you don't want to pay less taxes. At the end of the day, the businesses are fighting.
Well,
and the business that will suffer the tax.
Let's wind down quickly, even though Victor just said that, and I quote, sent this on X. I'm sure those 37 taxes Auntie Alero mentioned does not include Agbero taxes, the phase 2. Let's close with you, Mr. Obele. What would you advise the Nigerian on the streets, because that's where your own nomics is? What would you advise the Nigerian about all of these issues? What should be the position of the Nigerian to encourage what we all want and not just to lament?
So I would encourage them for the average Nigerian to realize that every crisis is an opportunity when looked at again from the right lens. Okay. And that would mean that there is need for them to begin to diversify, the income streams. As much as possible, do not play in very inflationary exposed sectors. If you have to play there, you have to look for a creative way, to tap into, to switch your business model. So, for instance, you sell bowls of soups as a business or as a food business, okay, an MSME. You want to look at how you can scale that into food security and run an access to market solution, biotech, and all that. So, there are ways to diversify income streams, and the goal is just to have a different perspective about the situation.
Okay, we have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming this morning. All I hear is from you both is that there is hope, because at least we can identify what the problems are, and if we do the things that will checkmate those problems, and they'll be resolved. Gospel Obele, Chief Economist, Streetnomics, thank you so much for your time this morning, as well as Mr. Emmanuel Onosami, lead partner, Cardinal Professional Economy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. All right, so the show continues right after this break. Do stay with us.